Okay, let's dive deep into something truly epic. A story that's really done more than just entertain. It's profoundly shaped culture for centuries.
Mm.
We are talking about one of the absolute cornerstones of Chinese literature, Luo Guanzong's Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
It's definitely a cultural touchstone, yeah. Not just a novel. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a range of sources. We've got literary analyses, historical comparisons, studies looking at all the different translations, and even, perspectives from modern readers around the world.
Good stuff. Our mission here really is to unpack this foundational classic. We want to explore its sort of historical bedrock, understand these legendary figures, appreciate the really intricate strategic thinking, and grapple with those timeless themes: loyalty, betrayal, ambition. They feel just as relevant now, don't they?
They absolutely do. And by doing that, you get this invaluable window into, well, Chinese history and culture. It really confirms its status as this, sparkling part of world literature.
So where does this huge, sprawling story even begin? It's not with a hero's birth or anything like that, is it? It starts with collapse.
Exactly. The novel is set against the backdrop of the late Eastern Han Dynasty. That's roughly 25 to 220 CE. And it was a time of major decline, eventual disintegration, really.
So the Han had been this unifying force for centuries.
Yeah, exactly. They provided that central authority. But by late 2nd century, that power had weakened dramatically. The imperial court was just, well, it was rife with corruption, often dominated by eunuchs fighting for power against the scholar officials, constant struggle.
That kind of internal rot.
Yeah.
It creates a vacuum around it.
Precisely. And as that central authority failed, power just sort of shifted outwards to provincial governors, regional military leaders. These guys already had troops, resources.
And they started acting on their own.
Increasingly, yeah, independently. And this breakdown, this loss of unified control, it plunged China into chaos. It basically set the stage for all these competing strongmen, the warlords, to emerge and start carving up the empire.
And the novel gets that sense of historical inevitability right from the very first line, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. The empire, long divided, must unite. Long united, must divide. It's quite a philosophical statement right at the start. It sets the tone for how the novel sees Chinese history, this cyclical pattern. Periods of unity are unstable, they lead to division, which then creates the conditions for, a new reunification. It's presenting history almost as a cosmic pattern.
And if there's one event that really lights the fuse for the novel's action, it's the Yellow Turban Rebellion.
Yes, absolutely. This huge peasant uprising starts around 184 CE. It's the catalyst, really. It pushes the failing Han Dynasty right over the edge, and crucially, it pulls our first main characters into the fight.
Led by Zhang Zhao, claiming mystical powers.
Right. He promised salvation. The rebels wore yellow turbans, drawing on all this popular discontent, famine, heavy taxes. And the sources mention this superstition popping up again.
About colors.
Yeah, replacing red with yellow. It ties into the 5 elements philosophy. Red was the Han's element, fire. Yellow was the turban's, earth. So it symbolized this cosmic shift, like the earth element burying the fire.
And this rebellion isn't just background noise. It's actually where our main trio first comes together.
Exactly. The Yellow Turban Army attacks the Zuo district, and that's precisely where Liu Bei, he's called Xuande in this translation we're looking at, where he first starts gathering followers, begins his military career.
Okay, so Liu Bei emerges here, and that leads us to maybe one of the most famous, most iconic scenes in the whole book. The Oath in the Peach Garden.
Foundational, absolutely. Tell us about it.
Well, it's where Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei, 3 men from totally different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
Liu Bei's got imperial lineage, Guan Yu's a fugitive, Zhang Fei's a butcher. They find this common purpose. They meet in Peach Garden, flowers blooming, and they swear this oath before heaven and earth. To be brothers, help each other, serve the state, save the people.
It's presented as much more than just a political deal. It's sacred. An unbreakable bond.
And this brotherhood isn't just a one-off scene. It really guides them, acts as their moral compass through the whole epic, doesn't it?
Totally. Their loyalty to each other, it drives so many of their actions, their sacrifices, their big decisions, especially as they try to build their own state, Shu, and, chase that goal of restoring the Han.
Let's look at the men themselves, starting with Liu Bei, or Xuande. What's his character like?
Liu Bei is consistently shown as, benevolent, virtuous, deeply loyal, both to his sworn brothers and to that goal of restoring the Han. The sources really emphasize his claim to imperial descent, which gives him a kind of legitimacy.
So he's the good guy, essentially.
In many ways, yeah. His efforts are often framed as humanitarian, protecting people, serving the dynasty, even when it's basically collapsing. But there's an interesting analysis, particularly from critics like C.T. Shia, mentioned in our sources. It suggests that those very virtues, his kindness, his loyalty, paradoxically, they become the reasons for his setbacks, maybe even his downfall.
That's fascinating. His strengths become his weaknesses in that brutal world.
Kind of. You see times where his compassion makes him hesitate when maybe being ruthless would have worked better strategically. Or he trusts people who end up betraying him because he assumes, they're as virtuous as he is.
Makes sense.
He might make decisions based on emotion, loyalty to friends, rather than pure cold calculation for the state, which is a huge contrast to someone like Cao Cao.
Right. And his sworn brothers, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, they embody loyalty too, but maybe in a fiercer way.
They do, yeah. Guan Yu is like the absolute epitome of righteousness, honor, incredible fighting skill. He's visually iconic, that amazing beard, his weapon, the green dragon crescent blades, sometimes called Cold Wonder.
A serious warrior.
Oh, yeah. He's shown as almost unbeatable one-on-one. The sources mention that famous scene, maybe a bit embellished, where he and Zhang Fei fight Lu Bu together, even against the chief among warriors. He holds his own.
And Xia's analysis mentions him letting Cao Cao go.
Right, after Red Cliffs. Guan Yu's sense of honor leads him to spare Cao Cao. And that decision has massive ripple effects in the story. It lets Cao Cao regroup, prevents a potentially quick unification, huge consequences.
And Guan Yu's influence, it goes way beyond the book itself, right? He becomes a god.
Absolutely. He's maybe the most visible, most enduring figure from that whole period in East Asian culture. He was gradually deified over centuries. The sources listed out made most loyal and faithful duke in 1120.
Wow.
Then warrior, prince, and civilizer in 1330. And by 1594, he's officially a god. Faithful and loyal, great emperor, supporter of heaven, and defender of the kingdom. Today, you see shrines to Lord Guan everywhere, especially in southern China among the diaspora. Revered by everyone, soldiers, police, merchants. He symbolizes integrity, brotherhood, even wealth.
Incredible. What about Zhang Fei?
Zhang Fei starts off as this incredibly fierce, maybe short-tempered warrior. Huge strength, uses that long spear. He can do amazing things on the battlefield, slay an enemy champion, hold off Lu Bu for 50 rounds, just raw power and fierce loyalty.
But he changes a bit.
Yeah, the sources point out a really interesting character arc for him, especially after he captures this veteran general, Yang Yan. Instead of just executing him, Zhang Fei is so impressed by the old guy's integrity.
He spares him.
He respects him, yeah. And it leads to a crucial alliance. It shows Zhang Fei can win people over with more than just force. He earns respect, gets honored in shrines in Shu too, alongside Guan Yu.
So we have this core brotherhood, forged in chaos, aiming for a virtuous goal. But they're just three players in this much bigger, much bloodier game, with warlords carving everything up.
Exactly. As the Han power just dissolves, these regional strongmen rise up, each with their own ambitions, their own territory. The novel really focuses on the three who eventually set up the kingdoms that give the era its name.
Wei, Shu, and Wu.
Right. Cao Cao, who controls the north. His son, Cao Pai, actually formally established his way. Liu Bei, carving out Shu in the west and southwest. And Sun Quan, ruling the stable state of Wu down in the southeast.
Let's talk Cao Cao first. He's maybe the novel's most complex character, often the brilliant villain.
Yeah, he's definitely the central antagonist to Liu Bei in the novel's framework, like Xia points out. Cao Cao is shown as this military genius, a strategic mastermind, even a poet, but also totally ruthless. Pragmatic.
That's saying a hero in troubled times, a villain in peaceful ones. That's him.
Often associated with him, yeah. Captures that duality. His rise is incredibly fast. The novel shows him in that early failed assassination attempt on Dongzhu. Though the sources say there are historical issues with that specific story, the timeline doesn't quite match up for Chen Gong and Cao Cao's arrest.
But his ruthlessness is real.
Undeniable. The sources mention those brutal massacres in Zuzhu. Revenge against Tao Qian for supposedly being involved in his father's death. It's a stark example he was willing to cause massive suffering to get revenge or achieve his goals.
But his military skill is just as clear.
Oh, absolutely. His strategic brilliance shines at battles like Guandu. He totally defeated Yuan Shao's much larger army there, secured the north. Crucial victory.
Any interesting stories about him?
Yeah, the sources have a few, like his reaction to Mi Heng, the scholar who just publicly ripped into him, insulted him viciously, instead of killing him on the spot.
Which you might expect.
Right. Cao Cao sends him off to another warlord, Lu Biao, basically using Mi Heng's abrasive personality to cause trouble for a rival. Cunning. And we know he wrote a military book, The New Book of Mengde, based on the art of war. Though, again, the sources note some think parts might have been borrowed from an earlier writer.
Interesting. How does Sun Quan of Wu fit into all this?
Sun Quan is shown as this very long-reigning, remarkably stable ruler. He controls the southeast, Jiangdong, and establishes the state of Wu. He actually took over after his older brother, Sun Si, died unexpectedly. Sun Si had built up their base, partly by getting the imperial seal from Yuan Shu.
So Sun Quan focused on stability.
Yeah, he was known for building up strong military forces, keeping a pretty stable government. He relied heavily on good advisors and generals, Zhu Yu, Zhang Zhao, Lu Su, capable people.
But the novel, it kind of sidelines Wu a bit, doesn't it, compared to Wei and Shu?
It does, significantly. Historically, Wu was a major power, often the main rival to Cao Wei in the north. They had their own distinct culture, administration. But the novel, it tends to push Wu to the margins.
How so?
Well, their campaigns against Wei get drastically cut down compared to the historical record. Sun Quan actually invaded Wei many times, historically. In the novel, it's condensed, maybe just a few times, and often only when Liu Bei's Shu kind of prods them into it.
So they seem more reactive.
Often, yeah. More like an ally to Shu against Wei, or sometimes a tactical problem for Shu rather than a main player with their own big agenda. The narrative choice kind of makes Wu the third wheel in the big struggle between Wei and Shu.
Okay. Before these three kingdoms really solidify, though, the early chaos is dominated by two figures, Dong Zhuo and Lu Bu.
Right. They explode onto the scene early on. They really embody that immediate descent into tyranny and just raw, overwhelming power. Dong Zhuo is the absolute archetype of the cruel tyrant.
What did he do?
Seized control of the court, got rid of the real emperor, put in a puppet, executed the old empress, her consort, terrorized everyone, massacres, enslaving villages, just pure villainy.
And Lu Bu was his muscle.
Exactly. Lu Bu starts out actually opposing Dong Zhuo, but then Dong Zhuo lures him over, adopts him. He becomes Dong Zhuo's champion. He's famously called the chief among warriors, supposedly unbeatable, rides that legendary horse, red hair.
And he turns on Dong Zhuo over a woman.
Yeah, the famous story involves the dancer Diao Chan, that whole romance and betrayal plot. The sources say that story was already around in popular tales before Lu Guanzong put it in the novel. It's how Lu Bu dramatically breaks with Dong Zhuo.
And that brings us back to the Peach Garden brothers, because there's that famous fight scene.
Yes. The legendary clash where Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei together take on Lu Bu. Whether it happened exactly like that historically is debatable, but in the novel, it's huge. It shows Lu Bu's almost godlike fighting skill takes all three heroes just to hold him off, and it really cements the brothers as major players on the scene.
So the political landscape is shattering, defined by these huge personalities. But the novel isn't just about strength. It's really focused on strategy, on brains over brawn.
It absolutely is. The whole era is defined by military tricks, political schemes. And it's worth noting, like the sources point out, the novel often boosts the roles of guys like Zhu Zhuliang and Zhu Yu.
How so?
It paints them as these almost mythical tactical geniuses, constantly involved in these elaborate plots and rivalries. It might exaggerate their direct influence on battlefield tactics compared to their actual historical roles, which could have been more about higher-level strategy or administration by the time the novel was written.
The most famous strategist of all is definitely Zhu Zhuliang, or Kong Ming.
Kong Ming. Liu Bei's key advisor. He's introduced as this reclusive Taoist scholar, knows everything about strategy, politics, even like cosmology. How Liu Bei recruits him is a famous story itself.
The 3 visits.
The 3 visits to the thatched cottage, yeah. Liu Bei goes 3 times, shows his respect, his sincerity to convince this brilliant hermit to join him. And once Kong Ming is on board, Liu Bei's whole fortune changes. He goes from being this wandering idealist to a real contender. His story becomes central, right alongside Cao Cao's.
His wisdom is legendary.
The novel gives him credit for countless clever stratagems. Some, like the empty fort strategy, are probably fictional or heavily debated, but they build his reputation as this master of psychology, deception.
What about the borrowing the east wind? That's a big one.
Huge. It's central to the Battle of Red Cliffs. They need a fire attack on Cao Cao's ships. It's the only plan, but the wind's blowing the wrong way. The novel shows Zhu Zhilang, maybe through his weather knowledge, maybe through ritual predicting or even summoning the crucial southeast wind.
Making the attack possible. It's exactly essential for the fire ships. Now, the sources say this is fictionalized, and interestingly, in the novel, Sun Quan's commander, Zhu Yu, actually gets physically sick worrying about the wind before Kong Ming does his thing, makes Kong Ming look even calmer, more brilliant.
And Zhu Zhiliang's influence lasts even after he's gone.
It does. He serves as prime minister for Liu Bei, then Liu Bei's son. His tomb near Hansong, the shrines to him, they're still places people visit, show reverence. The sources say before he died, he passed on secret strategic formulas to his successor, Jiang Wei. There are even legends about phantom riders near his tomb on Dingzhen Mountain. Just adds to the myth.
His rival, Zhu Yu, was brilliant too, though maybe Kong Ming overshadows him a bit in popular memory.
Zhu Yu was Sun Quan's top commander in Wu. Very capable general, strategist, known for being cultured, literary too, not just military skill. But yeah, his rivalry with Zhuge Liang is a huge part of the drama in the novel.
Especially around Red Cliffs and after. Exactly. And around the fight for Jingzhou province, the novel creates this intense, almost petty rivalry between them. Zhu is always plotting against Kong Ming, supposedly driven by jealousy of Kong Ming's genius.
By trying to trick Liu Bei out of Jingzhou.
Right. The sources mention Zhu Yu pretending to attack Yi province, asking Liu Bei for help, but really planning to grab Jingzhou while Liu Bei's troops are away. Or that scheme to lure Liu Bei into a marriage with Sun Quan's sister, hoping to capture him.
And Kong Ming sees through it all.
In the novel, yes. Zhu Zhiling outsmarts him both times, turns the plots to Liu Bei's advantage, and the novel gives Zhu Yu this really dramatic death scene. Dying of frustration, basically, because Kong Ming exists. He supposedly says, if Zhu were to be born, why must Zhu Liang exist as well?
But that's fiction.
Purely fictional ending for him, yeah. Historically, Zhu Yu died of illness much earlier. That intense consuming rivalry wasn't the historical reality.
So all these strategic minds, they clash in these huge battles that really decide the fate of the empire. And the novel stresses that it's often cunning, not just numbers, that wins.
That's a central theme. And the most famous battle, the absolute turning point, has to be the Battle of Red Cliffs. Chibi.
Where the seemingly unstoppable Cao Cao finally gets stopped.
It was massive. Cao Cao had unified the north, came south with this enormous army, way bigger than Liu Bei and Sun Quan's combined forces. He was going for total unification.
But they won. How?
Ingenious strategy, led by Zhu Zhilang and Zhu Yu. They used deception like Huang Gai pretending to defect, even injuring himself for the ruse, and Pang Tong supposedly advising Cao Cao to chain his ships together, making them vulnerable. Though again, sources say these specific tricks are probably fiction.
In the wind.
And the crucial factor that unpredictable east wind Zhu Zhilang supposedly summoned allowed them to launch that devastating fire attack on the chained-up fleet.
And the consequences were huge. Reshaped China.
Absolutely decisive. Red Cliffs stopped Cao Cao's southern march cold. Made unification under him impossible, at least for then. And just as importantly, it solidified Sun Quan's power base in the southeast and gave Liu Bei the space to expand west. It set up that three-way balance of power that defined the Three Kingdoms period.
What were some other key battles that defined the struggle between Wei, Shu, and Wu?
Well, after Red Cliffs, the fight for land really heats up. The Battle of Hanchong is critical. Liu Bei campaigns successfully there against Cao Cao's forces. It ends with him defeating and killing Cao Cao's general, Shihou Yuan. That victory really solidifies Liu Bei's claim to the land that becomes his kingdom of Shu.
And then there was Guan Yu's campaign. That didn't end well.
No, the campaign around Fan Castle was disastrous for Shu. Guan Yu attacked north towards Fan, had some early success, but got bogged down in a siege. And while he was busy there, Lu Meng of Wu launched a surprise attack back on Guan Yu's base in Jingzhou. Seized the whole territory, which cut Guan Yu off completely, led to his capture, and eventually Sun Quan had him executed. That was a massive blow. It shattered the Shu-Wu alliance, and just the emotional impact, losing Guan Yu. Huge.
So you see this constant back and forth. One battle, one decision can just completely change everything.
Exactly. The novel really hammers home that it's not just about army size. It's about calculated risks, knowing your enemy, using deception, adapting. And crucially, the actions and loyalties or betrayals of key people. That often determines the outcome. And how the novel plays down Wu's aggression, that subtly shifts how you see the strategic landscape, focusing you more on the Wei-Shu conflict.
Beyond all the fighting and these larger-than-life characters, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is really digging into philosophical questions, timeless human issues.
It's incredibly rich thematically. One of the biggest, most constant themes is that contrast between loyalty and treachery.
It feels like loyalty is the ultimate virtue in this world, but betrayal is just everywhere.
It is. The novel holds up unwavering loyalty as the ideal. You see it in Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhuge Liang, even Zhuge Liang's successor, Jiang Wei. The sources quote something about Jiang Wei.
Yeah.
All he knew, drawn from Kong Ming, on the day he died in Chengdu, all the generals of the Han wept. Shows his devotion right to the end. But this ideal exists against this constant backdrop of betrayal. Lu Bu betrays multiple lords, Zhang Kai betrays Tao Qian, then Cao Cao. Mi Fang's failure leads directly to Guan Yu's death.
So loyalty to your lord, your sworn brothers, is paramount.
It's critical, often framed within those traditional Confucian values, the 5 relationships. Virtue depends on your role, ruler and servant, etc. Your duty within that relationship.
There's also this strong feeling of consequence, right? Like cosmic justice.
Yeah, karma, retribution. That theme runs all through it. There's this underlying belief that actions, especially bad ones, disloyal ones, they eventually bring fitting consequences. Poetic justice, often.
Like Dong Zhuo's end.
Exactly. His tyranny ends with a violent, humiliating death. Or the sources mention that general, Yujin, who surrendered to Guan Yu. Decades later, he sees a painting of his own surrender on Cao Cao's tomb and supposedly dies of shame. It reinforces this idea that, bad deeds don't go unpunished forever, even if they bring short-term success.
And we see such different styles of leadership in the main characters.
Definitely. It's a deep dive into benevolent versus ruthless rule. Liu Bei is the ideal virtuous ruler, wants to restore the Han, cares for the people. Cao Cao is the pragmatic, often ruthless strongman. Famous line. Rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Power and control above all.
And Sun Quan.
He's different again. Focus on stability, endurance in his region. The novel uses them all to explore what works best or what's most moral in these chaotic times. The sources mention relevant Han philosophy here, too. Like the idea from Humanities that a ruler needs to grasp the root of all the diverse parts of the empire to keep harmony, or Shugan's idea of name and actuality, that titles and language need to align with real moral purpose and action to be effective for governance. Using titles for selfish reasons, that reduces their legitimacy, which really resonates with the power struggles in the novel.
How much of this story is driven by human choices and how much is just fate or heaven's will?
That's a really interesting tension. There's definitely a strong sense of destiny, divine will. The sources mention this feeling that one's fate cannot be avoided. You can't fight fate. Events often seem guided by signs, portents.
The mandate of heaven.
Central concept, the divine right to rule and how it can transfer. You have figures like Yuan Shu, Cao Pai, even Zhang Kui later on, claiming or thinking about the mandate moving to them. And the 5 elements idea comes back too, not just symbolism, but political justification. Yuan Shu used it to claim the mandate shifted to his clan.
And signs. Oh.
Yeah, portents like falling banners before Wu collapses are seen as bad signs, heaven's displeasure, foreshadowing doom. But alongside all that, human agency is huge. Characters make choices with real consequences. Their strategies work or fail. Their moral decisions shape their paths.
Those both.
It's a complex mix. Fate might set the stage, guide the big cycles, but individual choices, moral conduct, they still matter deeply. It echoes thinkers like Wang Chong, who said fate exists, but human action and moral education can still influence certain outcomes.
It's this incredible blend, huge historical scope, personal drama, strategy, philosophy that gives Romance of the Three Kingdoms its lasting power.
Absolutely. And its impact on Chinese culture. Just immense. It's soaked into the language. Everyday sayings come from the novel, like Wo Shu speak of Cao Cao and Cao Cao arrives. Basically, speak of the devil.
Right.
Or that saying, Hotuyo, the young shouldn't read the water margin, the old shouldn't read Three Kingdoms. The idea being water margin encourages rebellion, Three Kingdoms teaches complex, maybe cynical lessons about power.
And the novel itself, it integrates all these things.
Yeah, it's this chapter-style novel, weaves together military strategy, politics, even things people see as lessons for management, human relations.
And it sits in this interesting space between actual history and popular legend.
That's crucial for understanding it. Luo Guantong's novel is often called 7 parts fact, 3 parts fiction. It uses official histories, mainly Chen Shou's records of the Three Kingdoms, which documented events and figures. But the novel massively embellishes, changes things, invents details about battles, motivations, personalities.
Drawing on older stories.
Heavily. On popular tales, folk legends that had already grown up around Liu Bei, Cao Cao, Zhu Zhiliang, Guan Yu for centuries. And the novel's version so engaging, such vivid characters, often completely overshadows the historical reality in people's minds. It becomes the story of the Three Kingdoms.
Has that legendary status carried over well internationally?
It's recognized as one of the four great classical novels, definitely deserves more global study. But getting it understood overseas has had challenges. One problem noted in the sources, just not enough source text for really deep translation studies.
And the translations themselves?
Another barrier, sometimes. Crucial stuff like original notes, commentary, illustrations, things that gave vital context in older Chinese editions often got left out in early translations. So foreign readers missed a lot of nuance.
Any specific translators stand out?
Well, Brewitt Taylor was an early one. More recently, Moss Roberts' translation is really well regarded, widely available. The sources praise him for trying to capture the elegance and power in English, using what they call a domestication strategy, making it feel natural to Western readers. But crucially, he added tons of footnotes, explaining cultural stuff, historical context, acknowledging the hurdles.
That sounds useful.
Definitely. Martin Palmer also did an abridged version for Penguin Classics recently. It's readable, affordable, gives you a taste of every chapter. And online reviews, Amazon, Goodreads, generally positive. People recognize its cultural value, even if some complain about book quality sometimes.
And it's huge in other East Asian cultures, too.
Yeah.
Japan, Korea.
Massive. Yoshikawa Eiji's version, adapted for Japan and then Korea, is really significant. He wasn't just translating, he was a novelist who seriously reworked the story for modern readers, changed the structure, broke up chapters for realism, readability, based it on the Mao Zonggang edition, which was already an influential version.
And it really took off in South Korea under Park Chung-hee.
Yeah, particularly in the 60s and 70s under his military regime. It's an interesting connection. The sources suggest the regime unintentionally created the perfect environment for it, because the novel heavily emphasizes values like loyalty, self-sacrifice, patriotism. And those were exactly the values. Park Chung-hee's military culture promoted a culture itself influenced by Imperial Japan, where Yoshikawa's version was popular. The novel's focus on duty, strategy, loyalty to your leader. It just clicked in that political climate.
Wow.
Its peak popularity was then, but it shows how deep those kinds of militaristic, loyalty-focused codes run in Korean culture.
So from the fall of a dynasty through these legendary figures, epic battles, grappling with loyalty, fate, leadership, right up to its journey across cultures and centuries, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is way more than just a historical novel.
It really is. And it stays layered, often ambiguous.
Yeah.
It shows how goodness, benevolence can be totally impractical against ruthless ambition, how honor can lead to tragedy, how genius sparks admiration but also destructive envy.
A timeless picture of the human condition just on this massive stage. It still captivates, educates, gives insights into power, leadership, that whole cyclical view of history it starts with.
Absolutely. And thinking about those cycles of division and unity, that constant pull between loyalty and self-interest, what lessons does Romance of the Three Kingdoms offer about leadership, about navigating conflict that might still resonate today? In the power struggles and alliances we see shaping our own world across cultures, something to think about.